This is Talking Drupal, a weekly chat about web design and development from a group of people with one thing in common. We love Drupal. This is episode 526, Off the Cuff, AI News, Hooks, and Drupal 11. This episode of Talking Drupal is sponsored by Amazy AI. On today's show, we're talking about AI News, Drupal Hooks, and Drupal 11. We'll also cover Webform Scheduled Tasks as our module of the week. Welcome to Talking Drupal. Today we're doing one of our infamous or famous, depending on how you want to look at it, off the cuff episodes. We'll talk about a variety of topics and have some fun along the way, hopefully. I'm John Picozzi, Solutions Architect at EPAM, and today joining me as per the usual, Nick Laughlin, founder at Enlightened Development.
Happy to be here. Got a bunch of stuff to chat about.
And because we just like to change all the things, let's talk about our module of the week and turn it over to Avi Schwab, a technical product consultant at ImageX and a maintainer of a number of Drupal modules of his own. Avi, what do you have for us this week?
Hey guys, thanks for having me. So, have you or a client ever wanted to get fewer web form submission emails?
Always.
Do you like getting emails on a predictable schedule and not anytime a user decides to fill out your form?
Maybe. Tell me more.
If so, you might want to check out Web Form Scheduled Tasks. So, the Web Form Scheduled Task module was created by Matt Gill on November 22nd, 2017. It has a 3.0 RC1 release, which has Drupal 10 compatibility, but it is also awaiting review of a number of automated D11 fixes. So the last release was in November 23, or sorry, November of 2023. But just a month ago, I helped out Sean Dietrich get approved as new maintainer. He had a number of issues that he was working on. I saw that he had posted a request to become a new maintainer. So I made the connection on Slack between one of the existing maintainers and Sean. We submitted an issue and got it approved. And so hoping that he can get some new releases pushed out in the near future. The module does have security coverage. It also has tests to test the full functionality of the module, and they're passing. There's no standalone documentation, but there is a README issue in the issue queue that's RTBC'd. So that's also waiting to be merged. And that said, the project module page has a pretty straightforward description of what the module does and how to use it, along with a really nice screenshot. So getting it up and running is pretty straightforward. It has 24 open issues, only one of which is a bug against the current branch. But also 8 of these issues, as I said, are RTBC'd, so there should be a lot of fixes coming up. The module has 817 sites using it, so it's relatively small, but it seems like it's one of those small and powerful modules. To use this module, once you enable it, web forms will have a new scheduled task configuration screen. You go on that screen and decide whether you want to email all of the results of the form or just the results in its last export. Once you create that task, you can set a number of options. So you can set its next scheduled run and the run interval, whether that's a certain number of hours, days, weeks. You can also set where to email the results. So any number of emails, how those results come, whether it's a JSON or a CSV file, a couple other things about how the file is stored, and also whether to delete the submissions from the form in Drupal after they're sent. So this kind of like an archival process. There's also another RTBC patch that allows you to configure the file names to include the date and time of the export, which is really useful. By default, this just sends like export.tar.gzip or something, and having the timestamp on that file we found was really helpful for the recipients. And after you configure it, you just sit back and wait for cron to send you emails. So this is one of those Drupal modules that's like not like super interesting, but we've used it on a client project lately, and I thought it was really nice because they needed a solution. We needed a solution to a problem. We found it out in contrib land, and this module is built as a framework for web form doing scheduled tasks. So all of the hooks are in there. If you wanted to make a new task, all you would need to do is kind of figure out what you want to do, make that PHP file and submit it to the module, and you'd have a different kind of task in here. So not bad.
So this is actually pretty interesting. I guess my main question is what kind of have you noticed any performance implications for it? Because on a particularly high traffic site with a lot of submissions, which is the kind of site that you'd want to use this for, you're doing a lot more stuff during each cron run rather than or the cron run when it should run rather than just kind of doing it as needed. So I imagine the resources need to kind of bump up, or have you not even noticed at all?
We haven't we you know, the I think the site that we're loading it with or that we're using it with has, hundreds or maybe a couple thousand. We're not talking about like 10,000 or millions of submissions. We haven't noticed any issues like that. It takes the submissions, zips the file up. So it does save some space email-wise. It's not just sending like a raw text CSV or
Yeah.
JSON. So you get like a submissions.tar.gzip. Um,
Okay.
I mean, I'm in awe. I mean, I think this is a great module of the week, and I think it's I don't know. I kind of like it, and I'm thinking of a couple of different places where this could be very useful. One question I do have, and I think I already know the answer, but I'm going to ask anyway. This feels like something that ECA could do, right? I'm wondering, I'm assuming the use of this module is simply just for kind of like ease of use and the lack of overhead, right? Like if you just need to do this task, it seems silly to kind of like install ECA and have to go through all of the like configuration loopholes to get it to work the way you want it to. This module just kind of does it out of the box. Would that be a fair assessment, Avi?
I think that is a fair assessment. I've yet to run into any process that ECA probably can't do. But that said, I've also not actually like installed ECA on any client site yet because, like you said, I think it's got infinite functionality. But there's also there's some overhead. So I listened to some of that in some of that conversation in the keynote. I think it'll be really interesting to see where it goes. ECA is already so great. But yeah, like if you need to do one thing, you can run composer require web form scheduled tasks and install it, and you're good.
Yeah, I think that's the trick is finding for ECA in general is finding out where that line is, right? When you have enough like these types of modules, enough mass to justify making the switch to ECA. Because like you said, ECA allows you to, or if you need somebody that needs to configure it in the UI, kind of, or they have BPM and somewhere else, and they want to import those workflows, there's a lot of power there. But it's also if you're doing just one thing,
Yeah, I mean, we're scope creeping here, but I can imagine like a world of ECA, kind of like web form land, where there are dozens and dozens of different extras, and also like video tutorials of how to do things like this. And I think when we get to that point with ECA, where there's a whole ecosystem of SMPs
oh,
or
we're
modules
there.
or whatever. Yeah.
I maintain some of them. We're there. That exist.
Okay.
I don't mean from like performance. I mean just it it takes it's an ecosystem module like Webform, right? If you don't need that, I mean, I certainly have Webform is probably my most installed module, but I certainly have projects that don't have it, right? I don't install it without needing it. But yeah, no, this module is very interesting. I did have one question though. It doesn't look like this tasks are handlers though. So are they configured separately from the form, or are they not in the web form handler?
Yeah, that's correct. I was thinking about that like just before the call actually. I was like, why couldn't these be handlers? I'm not positive, but my thought was that handlers run on every submission. Is that is
Oh,
that
that might be right.
it I don't actually know, but my thought is that handlers run on submission, and this is a process that runs independently of that. So
That
it
makes
needed to
sense.
be a separate process. That's my theory. I haven't,
No, no,
you can ask Jacob the next time he's on the show.
I think you're right. I might look that up a little bit later too. But yeah, no, this
Yeah.
is a great module of the week.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing that I really liked is like the module, the project page has this big old screenshot that's like basically 100% of what you need to get the module going and to like understand what the module does. there's no way I can understate how useful that is in like in you know promoting your module. Just show people what it does on the project page, and they'll download it. It's magic.
Awesome.
Well, Avi, thanks for bringing us this great module of the week and filling in for Martin. If folks wanted to suggest a module of the week or reach out to you, how could they go about doing that?
Sure. If folks want to suggest a module of the week, you can reach out to at manclue on Drupal Slack, or you can ping in Talking Drupal. I'm happy to fill in for him. I'll be suggesting, I got some great other modules of the week suggestions, so I'll be handing those over. And if people want to reach out to me, I'm Froboy in most of the places, or Avi Schwab on Drupal Slack.
Perfect. Thanks a lot, Avi.
Oh, thanks, guys.
This episode of Talking Drupal is sponsored by Amazy AI. Are you worried about sacrificing data privacy for the convenience of using AI? The team at Amazy AI believes you shouldn't have to. That's why they've built an enterprise grade private Drupal AI provider that doesn't compromise security or data sovereignty. Amazy AI is 100% privacy focused, letting you choose the region where your data is stored and processed. They don't store your prompts, they don't use your data to train models, and everything is fully open source. So you can verify it yourself. You can even run the AI on your own servers or cloud accounts. With their purpose built Drupal AI provider, it's simple to get started. Just install the Drupal AI module and pick Amazy AI as your provider. With advanced AI tools, you can generate or simplify your site's content, generate alt text, and supercharge search, all while keeping your data and your users' data completely private. Amazy AI even offers a 30-day free trial with no token limits. So you can experience how AI can make your Drupal site smarter and faster without the privacy trade-offs. Visit Amazy AI today to get started. The Drupal Recording Initiative needs your help. Here's the Drupal Recording Initiative folks to tell you more.
Hi, Drupal community. Have you learned from a video on Drupal.tv lately? If you haven't, go check it out today. The site is a great resource and is growing all the time thanks to the efforts of the Recording Initiative. We bring all the equipment needed to capture sessions at Drupal events and help ensure the recordings are successful. As I record this, I've just finished uploading videos from Badcamp. In the next couple months, we expect to facilitate capturing DrupalCon Vienna, Pacific Northwest Drupal Summit, Southwestern Ontario Drupal Camp, Chattanooga Drupal Camp, DrupalCon Asia, and Evolve Drupal NYC. We run a tight ship, but it isn't free, and we could use some help to keep the initiative sustainable. If you have the means to donate, please visit bit.ly/helpdri. Corporate donations of over $500 are recognized on the initiative page on Drupal.org. I hope we can count on your support. Thank you.
Drupal Recording Initiative, super important and definitely worth helping them out if you are able. I know they were super busy recently recording DrupalCon Vienna, so we thank them for that. All right, Nick, it's you and me, like old school talking Drupal. Listeners, if you want to turn off your podcast player now, we'll completely understand. Although hopefully you hang with us because we have a list of fun things to talk about. First and foremost, I'm going to bring it right up at the top of the show here. We're going to talk a little bit about AI. Watching the Today Show this morning, they did a segment on AI generated news anchors. So I guess in the UK, they had this show on one of their news channels about AI and how people are doing different things with it. And the anchor kind of did a bunch of research. She was on a bunch of different locations within whichever city she was supposedly recording in, and then they wrapped it all up at the end by saying like, hey, I'm actually AI generated, I'm not a real person. To which the anchors on the Today Show were like, you know, talking about AI coming for their jobs and kind of being worried, I guess, for lack of a better word, that this could be the kind of next phase of AI, even though there are stats out there that say both yes, AI will take lower level jobs, and no, there'll be more jobs because more people will need to be involved in creating AIs and training AIs and so on and so forth. Knowing that you're a, I won't say AI skeptic, but you're cautious about AI. The AI news anchor to me seemed like a really good use case for kind of these AI generated people, because I imagine that, like, you or I, who don't necessarily want to be like a news anchor, right, could like get all of this data and do all of this research and then provide it to an AI and have them just kind of present that data to the masses, right? It felt like a really good use case for AI for me, but I want you to tell me why I'm wrong, Nick.
Gladly. So I think it's interesting to see people testing the boundaries here, but I think there are a lot of issues with this. I think one is, and this isn't strictly an AI problem. It's kind of a general problem, but news there's more to news than just reporting what happened, right? And while there's no such thing as truly being objective, I think a an organization like maybe the BBC or something definitely has more guardrails in place to make sure that thing is reported accurately
Mhm.
than an AI algorithm, right? Because one of the we know the problems with AI. It will just hallucinate. It will take your word for it over others, and you can more easily promote a particular viewpoint or agenda. And I'm not even talking about like stake. I'm just saying in general, you can just push things easier
Mhm.
with an AI backing it. I think the other big thing is two really big things that I've noticed. One is you use the phrase like this feels like a really good use case. I I think I don't know what the word is for this, but I think it's easy when as an outsider looking at something else, not understanding what actually goes into a particular job or system and think,
Yeah.
"Hey, that looks the same to me from the outside. It's a good use case. It's great. We could do all this stuff with it." And the truth is, I think that's one of the things really pushing AI because like I've certainly had it produce useful results for me on occasion, much more rarely than I think most people think it does. But when I truly try to use it for something I'm an expert in, 9 times out of 10, it even with the best models today, it's still garbage. 9 times out of 10, when I look at the output and think, "That looks great," it's because it's something I really don't know. And if you show it and I suspect if you were to show it to people who really do know that they are experts, they would be like it's like watching there's something around like how it's made. You watch how it's made, you
Mhm.
think, "Oh, wow, this is they really go into depth." And then you see how it's made on something that you know about, and you're like, "Oh my god, they skipped like 5,000 steps." Well, guess what? They do that for every episode. It's just that you
Right.
don't know the 5,000 steps for all the other things, so you think it's comprehensive, and I think that that's one of the issues here. Like, yes, from the outside or a demo for this kind of thing, it might look like they did the job of being a news anchor, but did they? I'm not a news anchor. I would bet that they probably didn't.
Well, so I mean, I hear what you're saying. And I think you're right that, like, somebody that is finely tuned to kind of what the output is might be able to say, like, oh, this is crap, or this was generated with AI. But like in my head, right, I was like, okay, like AI news anchor is not going to replace like an actual news anchor doing an interview one-on-one with a person, or an actual news anchor really doing an interview with anybody, right? Like, I don't think like that's a replacement. Where I looked at this and I was like, oh, this is interesting, is in those places where you know, somebody is gathering the data, right? Gathering the information. If they could do that and put it into an AI to generate the video, AI, and then the AI is, trying to remove its bias, right? Or it's provided a prompt that says, "Hey, just focus on this data. Don't go rogue." Right? You can build a prompt that would probably give you pretty decent results and stick to the data set that you provided. Like, we know that it can do that, right? I feel like that is a great use case. Do I think this is gonna, like, replace news anchors, replace journalism? No, I don't. But I do think, like, there is a use case here where, and maybe this is, like, rose-colored glasses thinking, and, like, that, I'm completely an idiot. Completely possible because, like, I, sometimes am. Like, my vision here is, like, maybe this makes news reporting more, well, I guess it's a double-edged sword. My hope is that it makes it more accessible to folks, right? Where somebody like you or me who doesn't necessarily want our face plastered all over the, maybe we're bad examples because we have a podcast and there's a video component. Let's talk about a person, not a real person, just a person, right? There's a person, they want to report on the news, but they don't want their face out there. They don't want to be a public figure. They just want to do the research, provide good data, and provide it in, like, a video format, right?
Yeah.
I imagine that that person could use this technology to say, "Hey, I'm creating this person, right? And they're going to be my news anchor, and they're going to they're going to present my data and my hard work, right?" Now,
Yeah.
with that said, they're creating the video, they're watching the video, they're verifying that they agree with everything in the video, and then they're releasing it, right?
That's a lot of assumptions there, but
Lot of assumptions,
yes.
and I'm assuming that they're doing it in good faith. I'm assuming that they're trying to remove their bias. I mean, I feel like any news anchor has a little bit of bias anyway. I
Well
mean, they try not to, but I sometimes
well,
I think
let's
that's impossible. But
that I think not having bias or, like, trying to be neutral is also a common myth too, right? Like, everybody has bias and bias is okay. The problem isn't that people have bias. The problem is if you don't acknowledge what it is and how it what a particular bias is in a particular story, right? So if you're acknowledging kind of and giving people kind of that information, like when you're reporting on something, there's inherently a viewpoint that you're giving it on that, and that applies bias, but that's splitting hairs, I think, at this point. I think really you highlighted though the second issue that I was going to bring up, which is accountability. Who's accountable if somebody doesn't review the script well enough or they feed it bad information or like you said, maybe you say only focus on this information, but what if there's something that happened last week or there's a trend happening now and you do want to pull in that information, right? Who's accountable? And if you're cutting out these lower level, simpler reporting jobs, you are taking jobs from the newscasters because everybody has to start somewhere. You don't just like wake
yeah,
up one day and suddenly you're a newscaster on CNN or NBC or ABC or, pick your news channel of choice.
true
And
story.
if you're replacing all these lower level sources, you don't have that you don't have that accountability, you don't have that
Yeah,
pipeline.
I don't think I'm suggesting that we replace, like, budding news anchors, right? I think that, like, my thinking here is folks that don't necessarily want to be a news anchor, but want to use the medium to bring news to the people, right? Like, I would imagine that somebody who's like, I want to be a news anchor on ESPN isn't gonna use AI to do their production work. They're gonna go through the process and do it themselves because that's how they're gonna learn and that's how they're going to improve, right? But yeah, I don't know. I'm always interested in AI where it's used to kind of like enhance or enable somebody, right? Which I know there's always a a good side and a bad side to that. But I mean, I think, like, it was just interesting to me to see, like, the news anchor's reaction of, like, "Oh god, like, this could come from my job," like,
Yeah.
horrified,
Yeah,
but I don't know.
I think that's the other thing too, and I've said this a few times on the show before, is that, like, people think that just because it can't replace what you do, people don't realize that it's not necessarily whether it can replace what you do or not, it's whether people think it can replace what you do or not.
Right.
Because if they think it can, they will replace you, whether they get a good product out of it, whether like businesses in general, people assume that businesses in general are rational, right? They make the best decision for them long term, short term, and that's just not true. Businesses generally prioritize short term over anything else. And
Well, I think that's absolutely accurate. I mean, like, I just imagine this being dangerous to somebody who doesn't know any better that says like, "Hey, this AI news person is way better than the," or perceivably is better than the news person I'm actually hiring. Like, why wouldn't I use this, right? And maybe it's not factual, maybe it's, misrepresenting or mispronouncing things regularly, but like, yeah, I mean, I think, you know, I think it's easy to say like, "Oh, this thing can do the job," but it's also, as you said at the beginning of this discussion, like, you need to understand the job really well before you can say, "Yes, it can in fact do the job."
is the people making those decisions don't necessarily understand the job really well,
Right.
right?
Absolutely, absolutely. So, I mean, I think that is a concern, and I mean, I don't think it's a concern just with this. I think it's a concern with any AI where you're like, "Oh, the AI can do it." I saw a demo last week of like, you know, AI basically taking a ticket and doing the task and presenting the code and all this other stuff, and I was kinda like, "Huh, alright." Like, hopefully there's a human in the loop, like, and hopefully this is like, this is cool, but like, is it practical? And I'm like, "Well, you know what's gonna happen? Some C-level executive somewhere is gonna see it and go, 'Oh, this is great. We need this. Let's do it.'" And
Yeah,
like, there's gonna be
an
there's
entire
gonna be
department gone.
there's gonna be questionable code put out there, and people are gonna be on the opposite side. They're gonna just be AI code reviewers, which
Yeah.
I don't know. I just thought this whole news thing was interesting. I looked at it as from a positive lens of, hey, it could empower people to be able to deliver more information out to the
Yeah,
masses.
I
Um, that's
to
all.
speak to that piece, I think I think that's also a double-edged sword, but the truth is, tools to do that kind of thing exist already without AI, right? If you want like, there's streamers that stream games without showing their face, and, you can set up avatars that do tracking so that it looks like you're speaking, right? So there's ways to use tools to do this kind of thing. Like there's ways to build these things that are tools that enable different people to do things that they wouldn't otherwise be able to do without replacing kind of the core piece of what makes something valuable, right? The trick is, and the same is true for AI. Eh, calling me a skeptic. I don't know if that's fully accurate or not. Like, there are certain places where it's useful. I think long term, people will find where it excels and where it doesn't, and it will become a tool in the tool bag. Whereas right now, everybody, I think things are starting to cool off a little bit, but everybody thought it was going to solve everything everywhere because people didn't understand what its limitations are. But you can see that adoption both for businesses and for individual use is cooling off. Like people are starting to realize what some of those limitations are, and they're focusing on the areas where it's helpful. Like parsing large amounts of information and pulling out specific pieces, it's really good at that. Writing something that's truly throwaway, like a small bash script or regex that you're going to use once and never use again, it's generally okay at that, right? But using it to replace a whole pipeline, a whole workflow, end to end, it's just not there yet.
It's pretty good
And
at
I
writing
don't think
writing meta tag descriptions for my blog posts, I will say that.
well, let's send it to an actual SEO expert and have them evaluate. Don't tell them it's AI generated and see what they say. Like, that's one of the things is maybe it's better in like, maybe it's better than I am at writing that. That doesn't mean it's actually good at it because I'm terrible at it.
Sure. I mean, I guess the way I look at it is like AI descriptions are kind of like dwindling, or meta AI descriptions are kind of like dwindling in the fact that like, yeah, they're used, but like they're not really looked at for SEO. So yeah, I don't know. When I read it, I'm like,
Yeah.
yes, that's exactly what this blog post is about. Okay. One last bit of AI before we move on, and just a quick, 10 seconds here. How annoyed do you get when people either in conversation or just in like day to day call something AI and it's actually not AI?
I mean, if I'm being honest, everything that's being called AI right now is not AI. It's just an large language model. It's an LLM. Like, they're just calling like, same thing with, like, video games. They always call, like, enemy actions AI, like, the AI game. It's not AI. It's an algorithm that's set to, like, if you do this, you do that, whatever. It's not AI. We don't have AI really truly yet anywhere. The piece that annoys me is services cramming things in, calling them AI, but not giving you differentiation to know if it's something that they already had that worked well, and now they're calling AI just to call it AI. If it's something that's just a wrapper for ChatGPT, if it's something else, like, but people calling things AI, people always misname things. Believe it or not, that actually doesn't bother me all that much.
So that's surprising. So I
Yeah,
do
and
I
I
do
surprised
think
myself with that answer.
like the labeling of AI things is kind of driving me nuts. Like I equate like if it's backed by an LLM, I'll go, okay, AI, AI adjacent, fine. But like the relabeling of things definitely is like, annoying to me
It's too much.
where it's like, oh, our new AI feature. I'm like, that's not no, it's there's no AI there. You just automate like you built an automation script
Yes.
and now you're calling it AI.
The one the
That's
the
not the
one that
same.
currently is annoying me the most is Notion, because you highlight text and it'll be like, "Do you want to rewrite this?" And they move, like, they put the action, so you click the copy and they put the action to, like, analyze it somewhere, and once you click that, it takes over everything. Like, you can't do anything for, like, 30 seconds, and you can't, like, undo it. It's so irritating.
Okay, let's get back to Drupal because this
Yes.
is a Drupal podcast, and you wanna talk about hooks. What specifically about hooks?
Yeah, so there's some news hopefully coming out for 11.3. So 11.3 alpha, I think, is coming out in 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks. And I've been working there's a few big improvements that I'm excited about. One, we got in about a week ago. We decoupled hooks from the event dispatcher in Drupal, which really it's just a performance optimization. It should be quite a bit more performant, so that's exciting. But the more exciting news is I've been working on making it so that hooks and themes can be object oriented now too. Hopefully that makes it in for 11.3. If it doesn't, it should get in shortly after. And Jurgen has been working on getting Jin into core, and he's actually converted that version. He's very excited about it too. He's actually converted all of Jin to use object oriented hooks as well as a in a kind of a test branch. So pretty exciting. It's been a lot of work, but
So
we'll be able to.
yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, but once we get this in, I think we'll be able to get rid of .theme files. So I almost feel like there's huge advantages to object-oriented hooks in general, but for themes in particular, one of the problems is the .theme file gets so long. Like I have clients that I've taken over that their .theme file has 2,000 lines of code.
Where would that code go if there isn't a dot theme file?
It goes into, I mean, most of it would go into, it's usually just hooks and helpers, right?
Yeah.
So it would go in the hooks directory, so source hook, and you have a file for each, whatever, however you want to organize them.
Oh, okay, so it basically breaks them out into their own files as opposed to just having one huge file with a whole bunch of
Yep.
stuff in it.
Yep.
That
And then you
actually
can
makes a
do,
lot that makes the it feels a lot cleaner, at least.
yeah. Yeah. And the really nice thing is you can break up things based on a few different criteria. You can break it up based on how often something is used, how many dependencies it has. So, for example, if you have a form alter that alters a form on one of the admin pages, right? You can put that in its own file, and that code is only going to load when you're on that admin page.
Mhm.
Whereas right now, because it's in a .theme file, every single page is loading that code. It's not
Mhm.
running because that hook isn't being called, but
Right.
you're loading code on every single page that almost never needs to be used.
Right.
You can also do some clever things. It's getting a little deep in the weeds, but for performance, you can set up things to only pull in dependencies when they're actually used. So you can actually get some performance benefits there too. But that's more advanced.
Now, does this have anything to do also with moving to object-oriented coding practices and away from, like, procedural coding practices, or is that stuff already been done?
No, like this is, I think, one of like there's minimal support for object oriented coding and themes. Technically, once a theme is loaded, it it can load object oriented code, but it's very rarely used. And people use a lot of kind of nasty workarounds to get that kind of working. But this kind of makes themes just able to register hooks in general. And like I said, my experience,
Mm.
most code and themes are hooks and hook helpers. And so moving
It alwa
that should take care of almost everything.
Yeah, it always interested me, and now that you say it, I guess I didn't really think about the fact that, like, your dot theme file or your what was it? What file what was it? What did it used to be called? Anyway,
Module?
what's that?
The dot
Dot
module file, or do you mean for themes? I mean, there's dot inc files and themes
Yeah,
too, but
so, like, those files
oh
that
no, there
kinda just, like, have catch-all code, right? Like,
yeah.
the
Oh, it's dot
fact that
theme.
they're loading on every page, right? And, like, running through it and going like, "Nope, don't need that, don't need that, don't need that, don't need that. Oh, here's the one I need," right?
Yeah,
Like, when you think about it, like, it seems wildly inefficient, and this definitely is moving in the right direction for sure, but, like, I guess I never really thought about it that way of, like, if you got 1,000 lines in your dot theme file, like, that's taking up time and cycles that could otherwise be spent somewhere else.
yeah. And really, I think the big honestly, the bigger benefit here is organization, right? So that
Yeah.
developers spend less time sifting through, like I mean, I have some like I said, I have some complex themes that have thousands of lines and dozens of hook implementations, and being able to organize those will save me a lot of time and headache, even if it's not for the performance side.
Now you said the hooks are in their own source hook folder?
Mhm.
Okay,
It matches how modules do it.
got it, okay. So no ability or some ability to put these into single directory components?
I mean, they're completely unrelated. Currently, single directory components don't have a way
Don't
to
support PHP, right?
yeah, there's no way
Yeah,
to do a
okay,
preprocessed hook for a single directory component, which I
okay.
think was an intentional decision
Yeah, 'cause it's more of a
because
front-end display mechanism, right?
exactly. I think
Yeah,
that's the plan. There's a couple of issues I've seen trying to give them some way to preprocess because it can be helpful, but really, I don't know if you remember, but Chex, when he was on to talk about hooks, when we had that whole show, one of the things he said is it's an abomination that themers have to write PHP in the first place. And it's
mhm,
true. Like a themer shouldn't have to know what a
yeah,
preprocess hook is or a form alter hook. They shouldn't need to know any of that stuff. But with this, an object oriented is a bigger barrier to entry. But if we're going to force them to write PHP, we can give them the opportunity to write better PHP, and we can organize it so they only have to know about the piece that they need to. They don't have to scan through thousands of lines of code to find what they're
yeah,
looking
and
for.
I mean, Drupal as a whole is moving towards, like, the ability for front-end themers not to have to interact with PHP
Yeah.
and provide them Drupal Canvas is a big push in that direction where you can bring in your JS, you can bring in your CSS and like, "Hey, there you go. It all works."
Yeah.
You know? So I think that, this is definitely a good move and kinda goes along that line of like, "Oh, now you don't need to know PHP to work with Drupal," which,
Yeah.
I don't know, I think it's great.
Yeah. And then as far as adoption, I've been getting more and more pings on Slack as people convert their modules and not themes yet, but their modules to object oriented. So always happy to always happy to help out there. Oh, I will mention too, one thing that I've discovered that's a little bit interesting, that will be a big caveat is themes don't support ordering hooks. Themes kind of have a fixed hook order, which modules don't. And then so that was a fun one to work around. But yeah, it's been a lot of work. I'm excited for it to get in once it does.
Why would you well, I guess I already know the answer to this. Why you would need a certain hook order. I mean, I'm assuming it's because you would wanna run hooks in a certain way to affect whatever you're trying to affect.
Yeah, so for example, the 2 most common are you wanna move yours before another module because that module expects a value that
Yeah.
your module sets, or vice versa. So by default, think about it for a module, right? By default, hooks run in the order of the alphabetical name, right? So if you have a hook, if you have a module named AAA and you're relying on something from a hook that the media module does,
Mhm.
your hook is going to run before media module, so you won't that variable won't be set and you can't do anything with it. So you can set up the ordering so yours runs last or after media at least. And then when your hook runs, it has the variable that it needs and it can do whatever it needs to.
I mean, is that as simple as going like, "Hey," like a the wait function of some sort? Like, "Hey, wait for this module to do its thing," and then, like or is it like
So
what's the mechanism there?
it's a lot easier after 11.2 with the order parameter and the hook attribute because you can basically say, "Hey, I want to run this first." So you just say order first or order last, or you can say order before or order after. So you can say before this module or before this particular hook, whatever.
Hmm.
Before, you used to have to use hook module implements alter, which is another hook, and you had to kind of manually shuffle the order of all the module. That
It's
hook
like
is
hook
yeah.
inception.
No, it literally is. The hook alter calls hook module implements alter a second time and loops over. That I mean, that issue took 4 or 5 took I personally spent almost 100 hours working on that issue to replace that single hook for ordering.
Oh
It
boy.
was it was a mess. So it's much easier now,
Alright, well,
but
it's good that we're
themes
moving in
don't
that
have that. So themes
okay.
don't need it.
Well,
They have a fixed order.
I mean, it's good that we're moving in the direction of cleaner, more reliable code. And speaking of cleaner and more reliable code, let's talk about Drupal 11, which I have yet to update my personal site to. I'm
Well, that's
waiting
what I
for
wanted
one module to be supported.
Well, that's what I wanted to talk about because I have quite a few clients that are waiting to update, and usually when a new version comes out, I start pushing fairly early to update them. And almost always in the past, I've updated sites on like the point 1 or point 2 version, definitely. With Drupal 10 to 11 though, I initially slowed down because I noticed Contrib was taking longer to update. Which at first worried me, but now it doesn't at all. I think the reason why is because the jump from 9 to 10 was so short. There was a lot of pressure to go from 8 to 9, then 9 to 10. Now people are just taking a little break. And because 10 is going to be supported until next December, 2026, there's not as much pressure. I still have been updating clients' modules and looking at the report and getting ready. And I actually have a couple of clients that are 100%. Like if you look at the upgrade status, it says 100%. We can upgrade to 11. But decided to wait. And the reason wasn't because we couldn't do it. The reason was because I realized these are active sites under active development. And if you need to add a module, that module also has to support 11. So now you get to a point where you can't add a feature
Mhm,
because a module doesn't have a Drupal 11 release. So I actually stopped I still update modules and get them ready so that it's an easier update when we get to it, but I
mhm.
stopped pushing for updates. My plan is actually I just started this about 2 weeks ago. My plan is to start updating sites in 11.3. So
Mm.
starting probably towards the end of the year, I'll start upgrading all my clients. I told them that we want to start getting ready. So my goal is to have every client updated by April, May-ish to Drupal 11,
Mhm.
because that gives them that's 2 or 3 months before Drupal 12 comes out, and if I run into any issues, that gives them 6 or 8 months of Drupal 10 runway still. So
So you're Your hesitation, and this is very interesting because I guess I never thought about that. Your hesitation is even though a site is Drupal 11 ready, like all the modules are supported, your hesitation is if they need another module or if they need another feature in the in the next X number of months, it might not be Drupal 11 ready, and you would then have to either say, "Oh, we can't do that," or you'd have to spend the time to kind of get that module up to date.
Exactly.
Huh.
Which you have to do anyway to update, but
Yeah.
it's different telling a client, "We can't update because something's not Drupal 11 ready yet, we're working on it,"
Yeah.
than, "Oh, this feature is going to take 2 months because I have to apply for," 'cause updating a module, if there's an inactive maintainer, is gonna
Yeah.
take over a month because you have to first create an issue, then you
Yeah.
have to transfer it, then you have to verify, like,
It's a far easier
process.
sell and also makes Drupal look better if you go, "Yes, we can install that feature, but it's gonna prevent us from being Drupal 11 ready right this second," as opposed to, "No, we can't
I mean,
install that feature, and now I have to spend the time to update it." To
honestly, I've taken the Drupal 11 readiness and evaluation off the radar. I mean, I'm gonna start
Yeah.
adding it again. At this point, I'm getting ready to start updating my clients, so I'm gonna start adding it again. The other thing is, and this is just kind of insider stuff, but, like, knowing how much the hook stuff changed between 11.1, 11.2, and now 11.3,
Mhm.
part of me was like, "I'll just wait until 11.3 is out,
Yeah,
update
because 'cause you're gonna
everything
have
for
to
that, and then"
refactor, right?
yeah, and then I'll just take care of it all at once.
Well, Drupal 11 is exciting. I am looking forward to moving my personal site to it. Like I said, one module sitting out there waiting for that to get updated. I don't know. I don't think I'll personally have time to work on it, but maybe someday in the future I'll be able to spend some time to work on it to try to get it up to date so that way it checks that box and I can move to Drupal 11. What I mean, what I guess what am I missing by not upgrading to Drupal 11? Obviously, a lot of the code cleanup stuff you were just talking about. AI, well, maybe not AI specific stuff because
It
that's
is
all
available
in
in
the
10.
AI
Yeah,
module, but
that's available in 10. I think, I mean, uh, there's, like, huge improvements to, I think, the whole recipe system.
mm,
There's huge improvements to performance installing, for example. So, like, 11.1 to 11.2, installing Drupal from scratch, yeah, I forget the exact numbers, but if you install Drupal with every single module on
mhm,
11.1, it would take 50 seconds.
yeah.
On 11.2, it'll take, like, 7 seconds, 8 seconds, 6 seconds, something like that. It's
So
very,
a
very quick.
dramatic improvement. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's things like that. There's, the hooks should be quite a bit more performant in 11.3 once this comes out. There's there's some caching updates, I think, that should be coming out in 11.3. It's just basically there's once 11.0 came out, they do still backport certain things to 10,
Mhm.
but a lot of the new stuff just doesn't become available until you update. Because
Yeah.
if there's something that's, like, truly disruptive, they're not gonna backport that to 10,
Yep. Yeah,
even
and
if it's
and
better.
and I mean it makes sense. I mean, we should be pushing things forward. We shouldn't be like I know it's gonna be controversial or sad or whatever, but, like, we shouldn't be kinda dragging people on older versions along with us. I think that has been one of the great improvements to the Drupal ecosystem is like, "Hey, we're gonna get into a pattern where, like, you're gonna have your current version of Drupal, a future version of Drupal, and then, like, once we get to that future version, we're gonna, like, discontinue support for that older version just to keep everybody kinda moving forward." So yes, I'm excited to get to Drupal 11. I will find some time to work on that module and hopefully be able to get there soon.
Is that the social media one still?
It is, yeah. Yep. That's the only one. All the other modules I've kind of put in tickets and kind of helped to try to work with folks to get them Drupal 11 ready. But yeah, just that one. All right. So have you watched the Dries Note from DrupalCon Vienna?
I did. I actually watched it live on YouTube that morning,
Oh, that's cool. I would have I
which
would have
I've never
liked
done before.
I would have liked to be able to do that, but I didn't. I watched it. I thought it was great all in all, but wanted to focus in on Drupal orchestration because I thought that was a super interesting. I mean, there was a ton of super interesting stuff in the Dries note. If you haven't watched it, I recommend it. There is a link in the show notes to the orchestration piece of that, so you can just scrub back to the beginning and watch the whole thing if you want. But this idea of orchestration and like if you've ever used like Zapier, right? Like bringing that sort of functionality to Drupal with an open source service that does kind of a similar thing. I know here at Talking Drupal, we've talked a lot about, using those types of orchestration tools to kind of do some of our show prep tasks and show note tasks and some other things. I don't know. I got really excited hearing that now there's like this open source option for orchestration and that it's going to integrate into Drupal and ECA. And, I'm
Yeah.
like, I keep spinning my head on like, oh, what's a cool like orchestration I could try out. And I will say, well, Avi was doing the module of the week. I was kind of like, oh, it would be cool to take your web form submissions and use an orchestration to say, hey, when a form submission comes in, put it into this Google sheet and delete it from the Drupal database after X number of days or whatever. Kind of things like that. I'm like, all right, how can I integrate more systems? I mean, I think that is one thing that Drupal has done really well via APIs, obviously. Like there are tons of
Yeah.
APIs, getting data in, getting data out, sending data to other systems. That's something that Drupal excels at for sure. I guess my excitement is to be able to kind of do it through the service, which I think was called app. What was the service called?
I don't recall.
Let me go look. But orchestration, Nick, how do you feel about it?
I mean, the anytime you're adding an LLM or something like that to the mix, I'm always hesitant just because, like, I think we talked about this on the AI show, is like your it's different granting access to an API,
Mhm.
whether it's push or pull, because you're granting access to it's much more granular. You're generally granting access to a particular piece, particular service. You have more control over what it's accessing. But a lot of these AI tools, you're granting access to the whole website, everything, which means that you need to rely. So for example, if we create an API to connect to SendGrid, right?
Mhm.
And I set up the SMTP server to send emails, like it's only going to get things that get sent through the hook mail system,
Right.
right? So you have to be careful that you're not putting stuff that you shouldn't be putting there, right? But you don't have to worry about it suddenly reading all the information of the submissions and well, I guess if you're using it to send the submission results, it'll have technically have access to that. But it is very different than giving an LM access to it, right? Like I wonder how much you can lock it down. Can you prevent it from seeing the configuration? Can you prevent it from seeing the users? Can you prevent it from
Well, I mean, I guess my question is like, Zapier has existed for a long time, right? And has been a visual orchestration tool for all of these
yeah,
APIs, right? Like I don't see this as being much different than that, other than the fact that now if you wanted to, you could say, hey, send this thing to ChatGPT and ask it this question with this prompt and then get a response and then do something with that response, right? So I mean like there's definitely possibility to, integrate a AI or an LLM here, but I don't feel like it's necessary. I don't
well,
necessarily
here's
know.
here's the piece that I've seen that's like from an infosec or like a security standpoint is like if you have this all integrated and you also have a chatbot for customer service, right? How siloed are those? And there
Yeah,
seem to be pretty good protections, but you're relying on ChatGPT. Like users will go to your site and be like, "Oh, what kind of site is this? How many users are there?" Like they'll start asking things that are normal
sure.
bot isn't go like, I have a client that does have some of these chat services, but they only it's not integrated with Drupal, it's an external service. and it only has access to the pages that we give it access to, and because it's external, it only has public facing information, right?
Yep.
But it's an attack avenue that you have to be careful of if it's a fully orchestrated, integrated piece where you're setting it up so that, okay, if the chatbot is on a product page, then I want you to focus on this kind of information. If you're on this page, do this. And we also have a developer AI bot to help us create views and XYZ, right? Making sure that those lines aren't accidentally crossed is a much bigger deal than if you're using a service like Zapier to integrate with a bunch of different systems and do XYZ, right? Because these orchestration systems are embedded in your tool. They inherently have access to almost everything, right?
Sure. Uh,
So, like I
sure.
said, I think it's powerful, but it's that age old thing with
Well,
great power comes great responsibility, and it's much easier to make a mistake.
yeah, so I mean,
And
I
leave
think
that.
like all of like there's the big caveat of like if you're an idiot and you do something dumb, you're gonna get a dumb result, right? I
Well,
mean, I think the way I look at it is like again, like art of the possible. Like, hey, we have, all of these services and systems out there and like building and connecting APIs, directly is tough. If we can open it up to make it, a little bit more visual, a little bit easier for people to do it and secure. I mean, security is definitely the priority there. I mean, I think it's important. Getting back to the name of the service, the open source service that Dries was talking about, it's called Active Pieces, which interesting kind of workspace and very similar. It seems very similar to Zapier, but is open source, which I
yeah,
I do appreciate. So it'll be interesting to see how that comes along. And yeah, I don't know.
yeah.
Maybe there's a
I'll have
show
to look.
about that later.
Yeah, I'll have to look closer because, like I said, I think it provides a lot of power, and I think it kind of gets back to one of the pieces that made Drupal 7 so powerful, right? You could download views, you could download views, you could download rules, you could download feeds and a few helper modules and build almost whatever you needed to, right? And this feels like it's getting back to that roots with more power, but like I said, it's doing it from a side that has more access than ever has. So you're going to have people that aren't necessarily experts in Drupal building these applications again. And how do we put make the system such that the default is secure? The default keeps
Yeah.
data safe.
Well, I think that's the that's where the developer comes in, right? So like there is an orchestration module now that kind of helps open up these APIs and endpoints, right? I think it's the responsibility of the folks working on that, which right now I think Dries and Jurgen are kind of working together on that. But like also the community to say like, okay, here are some here's some safeguards that we can put in place to make sure people don't do dumb stuff and they make sure that these systems aren't like kind of unchecked. I actually was just thinking of a use case where it might be interesting that when I put a show card into Trello, right, for a show that we have upcoming, that it takes that card title and goes out and generates the doesn't generate, but creates the show notes document with the template that we already have in Google Docs and creates the node on our Drupal site as unpublished. So that way we can have that there ready to go. And like, I don't know, I could see it being very, very useful to have those kind of orchestrations in place where, it's just kind of removing some of that manual work.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we've talked about that in the past.
We have. I just, again, it all comes down to time and a lack of it. All right. We're almost at the end of the show. We got a couple more topics to talk about, one of which is the New England Drupal Camp. I know we already did a promo for the recording initiative, but as we're both organizers of the New England Drupal Camp, I wanted to drop this in and say the New England Drupal Camp is coming to Providence, Rhode Island on November 14th and 15th, 2025. Session schedule has been posted. The trainings are there. We've got 4 or 5 great trainings, one of which is
Yep.
Intro to Drupal, one of which is on AI. I think Mike Anello is doing a single directory components training. So plenty of great topics. It's fun. It's a fun camp, if I do say so myself. And if you want to attend, you can go to nedcamp.org to learn more.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it. Oh, I gotta get those signs so I can get them printed.
Oh yeah, there's no shortage of things to do to get ready, but
Yeah, plenty of
we'll
work to do.
we'll get it all ready. Don't worry. By the time you get there on the 14th and or 15th, it'll be ready for you. So, Nick, I had the thought the other day, and I know like I'm working on a project right now, and previous to this project for like the last 3 years, I was working on the same project, and working with a new client, and that's always interesting to me. And I know on the show you always talk about your clients and that you have them and that you do work for them, and it is mostly I think Drupal work, but like I don't know, I was just curious, like what are you working on? Like what kind of stuff are you doing on the day to day that kind of keeps you going?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. So I would say that most of it is Drupal, but not all of it, believe it or not. And recently, more and more of it has become WordPress based and web component based. And I've also worked on, not super recently, but I've worked on some Silver Stripe sites, which was a
What?
another Silver Stripe is another
Yeah, what is
company
that?
based PHP CMS. It has some, so it's like it kind of feels like a middle ground between Drupal and WordPress, right? So it's a
Okay.
much, much smaller community, like significantly smaller, both.
Let me ask you this, because my next question was going to be like the state of Drupal work, but like let's merge these two things together. How
Sure.
many of your current projects right now are Drupal versus like other?
I mean, that I don't even know how to answer that because let me just talk about the ones that I do the WordPress stuff for. So I have 2 clients. So most of my clients are agencies or
Mhm.
organizations that have an internal development team, right? And I'm
Okay.
development, and some of the agencies are smaller and like design agencies, and I'm like the only developer. Some of them are slightly bigger and have some developers on staff as
Mm,
well, right?
okay.
The 2 that I do WordPress work for, the one of them is they're responsible for WordPress sites, and I help them with like mostly DevOps stuff and make sure things run. I don't really do the active. I'll dive in sometimes if we need to find something, but I'm not really. We're not building new WordPress sites there directly. We're
You're
kind
the
of supporting
infrastructure
other
guy.
teams.
You're making sure the
Yeah.
sites show up when you go to the domains and stuff.
Yep.
Yeah.
With some occasional support and then making sure like that particular client has really, really a lot of strict requirements for security and that kind of
Mm,
thing. So make sure that whoever is developing it is meeting those and, helping put together guidelines for WordPress development, that kind of thing.
yeah.
And the number one guideline is generally don't use WordPress if you care about security. By the way. The other client, they kind of, I would say they're split. They do Drupal and they do WordPress.
Hmm.
I think the majority of their business is WordPress. I don't again, I kind of helped architect a system for them. At this point, I kind of for the WordPress stuff, a lot of it is launch planning and infrastructure stuff, but also if there's a particularly deep issue, I can help dive in on that too. But I wouldn't say a lot of my time is spent doing WordPress. I will say that very often when I do have to dive in deep on WordPress, come away scratching my head far more
You
often than I
you come
do
away
Drupal.
appreciating Drupal a lot more.
I do, and
Yeah.
I'll say that Drupal very often one of the things I've really realized is that Drupal very often it's not always the easiest to get something started in
Mm,
Drupal,
yep.
but
It's getting
Drup
easier.
it is, but Drupal has solved so many just core problems
Yeah.
that WordPress isn't even close to, like, addressing. So, for example, Composer. Yes, Composer is a pain. and Composer is a barrier to entry.
I
Or
don't find
no,
Composer to be a pain or a barrier to entry,
it's not
but
a pain when it works, but if you don't know if you don't know best practices and dependency management, that kind of stuff, it's a barrier to entry. It's another tool to learn.
I
But
mean, okay, I mean, that's true of anything, but continue.
yeah, yeah, but it's
I don't
another
know how
tool
to
on top of
knit,
what you're
so,
trying to do.
like,
Yeah.
needles and yarn are a barrier to entry for me, right?
Fair enough. But Drupal has Composer solved. In fact, the latest version of Drupal deprecated using anything besides Composer entirely. Like Drupal 12, you will not be able to install without using Composer. Period.
Which feels great
Um,
to me, like, I
yeah.
wish more people were kinda forced to use Composer.
Now the opposite side, WordPress doesn't have a core doesn't have a Composer thing. So basically, if you want to use Composer with WordPress, you have to choose one of 3 or 4 different people that kind of maintain their own registry of WordPress plugins.
Interesting.
And they all have
Huh.
slightly different pros and cons and processes. But the real problem is WordPress has a huge ecosystem of paid plugins. And every single paid plugin may or may not support Composer at all. The ones that do support it usually gate it, so you have to set up, like, all sorts of keys and things to get it to work.
So what does that look like? Like, as far as, like, right now, so example, we go Drupal/webform, and it
Yeah,
goes and gets a webform module, and so is it like,
it's the
X,
Wild
Y, and
West.
Z slash plugin and
Yeah,
B, Q, and
it's the
D
Wild
slash
West. So
that
I
feels
find
like
that
that's annoying.
there's 4 cases. It's worse than annoying. There's 4 cases. Case number 1, it's a public plugin that they've released. Then you can just use whatever one you choose. Like, I think we usually use a guy named John Block. You just do John and he has, like, WP packages or something. So you just do WP packages slash plugin slash dash whatever it's called, then it just works. If it's a paid plugin, you have to
But maybe because he doesn't have all the plugins.
yeah. So if it's a paid plugin, you have to go to the company and you have to say, "I wanna use Composer." Some of them will say, "Oh, we don't know what Composer is." Some of them will say, "Oh, we support it," but then you try to use it and it doesn't work because nobody in WordPress land uses Composer, so they never test it. And some of them will say, "Yep, here it is. Here's our private packages. You have to use that, and you can only use it once you have the license." That's not even the worst. The worst is some of them, when you put your license key in, they download the so you install a free version of the plugin, you put the license in, and then that free version of the plugin goes back to their server, says, "We have a licensed version here," downloads a new version of the plugin, and replaces itself on disk. And for some services like Upsun or Platform SH, which are read only, they flat out don't work. Like you can technically get them to work, but you have to jump through so many hoops to get them to work. And that's just the like WordPress itself does not because they don't support Composer flat out of the box, these types of problems aren't solved. And you're left up to your own devices to figure out how to solve it.
Huh.
And
Okay.
there's so many things like that. Like config management, there's no config management in WordPress. You if you add a new feature, you have to write down the steps that you did, deploy to production, log into production, and repeat those steps and hope you didn't forget something.
So, I mean, like, sounds awful, but, like, I'm assuming WordPress users are blissfully unaware that, like, these things are helpful
Yeah,
and useful,
most of
right?
them.
Because most of them aren't getting into that level of code, or they're using a hosting vendor that's WordPress specific and
Yeah.
they support those sorts of things, right?
Yep, it's things like that, and, like, image management, like, you go down the line, like, things that are, like, infrastructure like, taken for granted in Drupal, they just don't it just doesn't exist in WordPress.
Okay, so getting away from like this week in or talking WordPress, right? I wanna finish the thought here on like state of Drupal, right? So sounds like you're working on like a fair amount of WordPress stuff. You do still do some Drupal work. Obviously, you're super involved in the community. Like, what do you think the state of Drupal work is right now?
I th I think it's tough. I mean, I thankfully haven't been particularly affected right now, but I've certainly seen a large uptick in people reaching out to me for work or for references far more than in the past. RFPs, I don't usually do them myself directly, but like I said, I work with a lot of agencies, and so I help write those sometimes, and those seem to have slowed down a little bit. But I think that's less of a sign of anything happening in Drupal in particular, and more of a sign of just the general state of things right now.
Mhm.
The the truth is, I think things like Canvas, I think things like the AI initiative, I think those types of things, the initiative to make Drupal easier, Drupal CMS, all these things, I think will help the Drupal ecosystem in general and improve adoption. I will say, I think that Drupal CMS has produced a lot of excitement from companies, right? The amount of contribution has gone through the roof since
Yeah.
Starshot was announced. I would love to find a way to, like, redirect some of that back to core, right? Because w
I think it is. I think it
I mean, from my perspective, the biggest impact I've seen is core is now much more readily able to just say, "We don't need that module in core anymore. CMS can handle it." So think like, I don't know if you know this, but your favorite module, the contact module is leaving core. And the
might be time
rationale
for that.
basically, yeah, part of the rationale is that Drupal
Right.
CMS can just install it, or they can
I still
install
don't know
Webform if
if
they
it's
want.
my favorite module, but I do find it a little bit more
What is your favorite
manageable.
core what is your favorite core module?
Oh gosh, I don't know. I'm pretty partial to Layout Builder, I guess, but
Yeah.
I don't know.
So,
I like their
well,
bunch of modules.
I suspect Layout Builder will be coming out of core once Canvas gets in too, but the
Rightfully
biggest
so.
the biggest impact I've seen is that core is much quicker about basically shedding modules that are kinda edge casey because Drupal CMS can just handle that. But I don't see a lot of that. And like I said, anything that's contributing to Drupal as a community, as a whole is helpful, but I don't see a lot of that contribution coming back directly to the core APIs that are needed to run all that stuff.
I don't know, like recipes and project browser are all things that are very, very much Drupal CMS driven. And like that stuff's all coming back to Drupal core and people are building recipes for
Uh,
other things when they are using Drupal core. So I mean, I don't know. I think that's actually one of the biggest positives to come out of Drupal CMS.
yeah, I think the recipe initiative and package manager are 2 big exceptions. I think you're right there. And I think a lot of that is directly related to the fact that, Adam, Ben Proxima is kind of he's in charge of CMS, and he also did a lot of work on recipes on the recipe initiative. So when he needs something for CMS, he's also one of the people that writes that stuff. So I think that pipeline is definitely there, and that's definitely a byproduct of all this investment in Drupal CMS, right? He's able to focus so much of his time on Drupal
Yeah.
CMS and all that kind of stuff because there's all this interest. But when you look at something like, the caching API or the render API or any of that kind of stuff, like these are things that are, yes, they work, they're battle tested, but they're old. They need refactoring. They need a lot of work. I'm I'm not seeing a lot of the companies that are investing in CMS or Canvas or or AI or that
Yeah.
kind of stuff also investing in these underlying APIs. But
Yeah. I
I think that's a slow process. Like I don't think we're at a point where that really needs to change all that much yet, but eventually it'd be good to see some of that interest percolate back into the core queue to help increase the velocity of core itself, right? It's good to slim it down, but it needs work too.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think we will start to see that. I think, like, I agree with you that I think these new features, AI and Drupal Canvas are definitely going to help propel Drupal forward. I also think that like we have a little bit of a popularity problem right now, and I think a lot of these new features are focused on helping with that, and by helping that popularity problem, people will come back to Drupal core and say, "Hey, this underlying system needs a refactor. Let me jump in and do it." I also think products like Acquia Source are gonna help to kind of drive these things forward. I was actually having a conversation this morning where, you know, about we were talking about Layout Builder and how there were some key features of Layout Builder that were kind of just not ever finished, like translation, for example.
Yeah.
And the community stepped up and helped find a solution for that, workaround, whatever you want to call it.
Well, I would definitely call it a workaround more than a solution.
Okay,
And to be
fair.
fair, Canvas is doing the same thing. I mean,
But I think the difference here is that, like, Acquia now has a product that is heavily based on Canvas, right? So I think that a lot of the feature improvements and also tightly coupled to Drupal core. So I think a lot of the feature improvements we're gonna see now, will solve some of those issues, some
yeah.
of those problems. I will say I agree with you that, the Drupal RFPs seem to have slowed, but I share your opinion that it's more global economic or global business related than it is actually Drupal itself. Overall, I don't know. I'm optimistic. I think the future for Drupal is bright. And if you have not watched the DrupalCon Vienna Dries Note, I suggest that you do it because it has a lot of really cool stuff in it that I personally can't wait to check out. All right, Nick. Well, we've made it through yet another off the cuff episode. Hopefully, everybody's still awake while listening. They found it engaging. And yeah, well, thanks as always for joining me.
Always a pleasure. Do you have questions or feedback? You can reach out to Talking Drupal on the socials with the handle Talking Drupal or by email with show@talkingdrupal.com. You can connect with our hosts and other listeners on the Drupal Slack in the Talking Drupal channel.
If you want to be a guest on Talking Drupal or our new show, TD Cafe, if you want to be a guest on Talking Drupal or our new show, TD Cafe, click the guest request button in the sidebar at talkingdrupal.com.
You can promote your Drupal community event on Talking Drupal. Learn more at talkingdrupal.com/TD promo.
Get the Talking Drupal newsletter to learn more about our guest hosts, show news, upcoming shows, and much more. Sign up for the newsletter at talkingdrupal.com/newsletter.
And thank you, patrons, for supporting Talking Drupal. Your support is greatly appreciated. You can learn more about becoming a patron at talkingdrupal.com and choosing Become a Patron.
All right, Nick, if folks wanted to get a hold of you, how could they best go about doing that?
You can find me pretty much everywhere at Nixvan, Nixvan.
And I'm John Picozzi. You can find me personally at picozzi.com, on the socials, and drupal.org at John Picozzi, or you can find out about EPAM at epam.com.
And if you've enjoyed listening, we've enjoyed talking. See you next week.
Have a good one.